There is a season in some lives that feels like quiet rejection. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just empty. You look around and notice how easily others seem to fall into alignment. Relationships forming. Friend groups solidifying. Lives moving in pairs, clusters, families. And you are walking alone. Not because you failed. Not because you are broken. Not because you are unlovable. But because something in you is being asked to develop without witnesses. This is the part most people never hear. Solitude is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is a preparation. And the souls who experience it most deeply are often the ones least suited to being shaped by crowds. If your path feels quieter than others, it may be because your life is not meant to be guided by noise. It may be because this season is not pushing you away from connection, but pulling you inward towards something that cannot be learned in company. It doesn't feel spiritual. It feels personal. It feels like you missed a turn everyone else somehow found. Like your life stalled while theirs accelerated. Like you were left behind in some invisible race. You don't wake up thinking, "Ah yes, my sacred season of solitude has begun." You wake up wondering what's wrong with you. Why conversations feel shallow. Why relationships exhaust you. Why even when you are surrounded, something in you remains untouched. This is where confusion begins. Because culturally, solitude is framed as a flaw. A temporary failure. A gap that must be filled as quickly as possible. But not all empty spaces are losses. Some are invitations. Some are rooms clearing themselves so something else can enter. When solitude arrives uninvited, it often means your life is reorganizing at a level deeper than comfort. This is not the season of accumulation. It is the season of subtraction. And subtraction feels like loss until you realize not every soul grows the same way. Some people become clearer through others. They find themselves in reflection, affirmation, feedback. But some people lose themselves that way. You are likely one of the latter. Sensitive nervous systems. Deep internal worlds. Strong intuition that goes quiet when external voices dominate. For these souls, constant connection blurs identity instead of strengthening it. You don't dissolve into others because you're weak. You dissolve because you're porous. And porous souls must learn containment before communion. This is where Jung's idea of individuation matters. Before union comes differentiation. Before togetherness comes selfhood. If you skip this step, relationships don't become partnerships. They become shelters. Crutches. Distractions from an unfinished inner life. Solitude arrives not because you are antisocial, but because your system requires clarity before merging. Forced togetherness during this phase doesn't nurture you. It confuses you. So life separates you gently, then firmly, until you can hear yourself again. There is work that cannot be done while being witnessed. Not because it's shameful, but because it's formative. Solitude removes emotional outsourcing. There is no one to regulate your mood. No one to soften your reactions. No one to distract you from what arises. At first, this feels unbearable. Unprocessed thoughts surface. Old fears speak. Desires you buried knock loudly. And without mirrors, something solid begins to form. Identity. Not the identity shaped by approval. Not the one adjusted to fit expectations. But the one that remains when no one is watching. This is where intuition sharpens. Because intuition cannot speak over noise. This is where values clarify. Because they are no longer negotiated. This is where self-trust begins. Not as confidence, but as familiarity. You meet yourself when no one is there to reflect you. And once you have met yourself this way, you cannot pretend not to know who you are. During inner reorganization, connection often feels like weight. Not because people are wrong, but because roles are outdated. You are changing internally while being expected to remain recognizable, stable, consistent, predictable. That mismatch is exhausting. You find yourself performing emotional availability while needing silence, offering reassurance while seeking truth, maintaining connection while shedding identities. This doesn't mean you've stopped loving people. It means your attention has shifted inward. And inward shifts require quiet. You are not rejecting relationships. You are temporarily unable to maintain them without betraying yourself. This is why withdrawal often feels necessary but guilt-inducing. You are not antisocial. You are under construction. And construction zones are loud internally, even when they look quiet from the outside. Loneliness will visit. That part is unavoidable. But loneliness is not the enemy. Resistance is. Loneliness hurts because it exposes emotional dependency. It shows you where you were leaning without realizing it. Where presence was substituted with proximity. At first, loneliness feels like absence. But if you stay, if you don't rush to fill it, it matures into presence. Self-companionship. You learn how to sit with discomfort without narrating it. How to be with sadness without fleeing it. How to experience longing without turning it into urgency. Loneliness is not proof solitude failed. It is proof it is working. It is the nervous system recalibrating. And on the other side of it is an unexpected quiet. Not emptiness, but steadiness. When feedback disappears, authority must arise. There is no one to validate your decisions. No one to confirm your instincts. No one to absorb your doubt. So you listen. At first, your inner voice feels uncertain, unused, soft. But voices grow strong through use. You begin making decisions without consensus. Sitting with consequences without outsourcing blame. Trusting your timing without explanation. This is how inner authority forms. Not through confidence, but through repetition. A voice you never listened to cannot guide you. And once you learn to listen, external approval loses its grip. You become harder to manipulate. Harder to rush. Harder to confuse. Because your center is internal now. Solitude is not the final destination. It is preparation. Once desperation dissolves. Once wholeness stabilizes. Connection changes shape. You stop seeking completion. You stop negotiating yourself. You stop rushing intimacy. And because of that, what arrives is different. Cleaner. Mutual. Unforced. You recognize resonance instead of chemistry. Alignment instead of intensity. Presence instead of performance. You don't walk alone forever. You walk alone until you're ready. And readiness is not eagerness. It is groundedness. There is a season in some lives that feels like quiet rejection. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just empty. You look around and notice how easily others seem to fall into alignment. Relationships forming. Friend groups solidifying. Lives moving in pairs, clusters, families. And you are walking alone. Not because you failed. Not because you are broken. Not because you are unlovable. But because something in you is being asked to develop without witnesses. This is the part most people never hear. Solitude is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is a preparation. And the souls who experience it most deeply are often the ones least suited to being shaped by crowds. If your path feels quieter than others, it may be because your life is not meant to be guided by noise. It may be because this season is not pushing you away from connection, but pulling you inward towards something that cannot be learned in company.